goodbye, baby, diamond ring.
This is Dawn Bly and Ray Cherry with our guest Charles Benjamin talking with you on the Reform Time Show about wind energy. And if you have any questions for Mr. Benjamin, you can give us a call at 816-792-1140 or star 1140 on your Verizon phone. Now, before our break, we were talking about why Flint Hills was such a great wind energy region, because it had the high concentration of winds plus the availability of transmission lines to areas where they could use the energy. There is another part of Kansas, basically the whole half of western Kansas, which does also seem to be of large potential. Could
That's
you comment
correct.
on that at all? Because that would seem to be a great area where farmers who need the income right now could use it.
Absolutely. The Flint Hills has been the controversial area, and it got so controversial that Governor Sebelius put together a wind and prairie task force that met for about January through April. I was asked to be a technical advisor to that as a lawyer who deals with some of the zoning issues and other issues dealing with that. And frankly, they couldn't come to a consensus about what should or shouldn't be done. There's still a split about it.
So what's the deal?
I might just add what's happening is that the issue is whether the state should somehow intervene and either prevent or regulate wind turbine development in the Flint Hills. And one school of thought is that land use is basically a local
Private
issue.
issue.
Well, private in that we
Landowner.
have private landowner rights, which are the classic English private property rights. But then there's zoning, where zoning says that the community will decide how land is to be used and in terms of land use planning. And what's happening in the Flint Hills is that some counties are zoned and some aren't. And some that are zoned have started to pass regulations about this. Butler County did that. And most recently, Wabunsee County actually decided to ban it. So, but there's other counties that are not zoned. But anyway, that's kind of a fluid situation. What the most salient thing is that Westar Energy has a request for proposals for 200 megawatts of wind power, and that is likely to come from the Flint Hills. And also, KCPNL, as a result of all the heat they were taking about their proposed coal-fired plants, has also announced that they're open to about 200 megawatts of wind energy.
Yeah, I
Again,
saw that
that's-
thing in the
yeah.
early in July about you were involved in this, the second coal plant controversy.
Right.
They decided
and they
not
have
to do that.
decided, well, we'll also look at wind, and that's likely to come from the Flint Hills. But let's talk a little bit about western Kansas, because that's really where the potential is. One of my clients has estimated that there could be up to 9,000 megawatts of potential in Kansas. Now, you have to put this
Which,
in
how many wind
perspective.
mills is that?
Well, we have 110 up so far, and that powers about 30,000 homes. The Wolf Creek Nuclear Power Plant, which is a large electric utility plant, is 1,100. So imagine 8 nuclear power plant potential in western Kansas. And
the whole place will be spinning.
well, the whole place will be spinning, and you've got open land, large ranches. So why isn't it happening? Well, the main reason why it's not happening is transmission limitations. The fact is that, again, transmission lines are expensive, and they tend to be clustered where the load is, in other words, where the demand is. So you get out to western Kansas, there's very few people, and so there's no place to, if you're western Nebraska, western Oklahoma, eastern Colorado, not a lot of people, so limited transmission capacity. And that is what has been limiting wind power development in Kansas. Now, let me emphasize that the potential here is enormous. And let me talk a little bit about Kansas as an energy producing state. The state has been a net energy exporter throughout its history up till 1997. Let me explain where the energy comes from. I mentioned coal from southeast Kansas. Most of that used to be exported. Then Kansas is one of the oldest oil producing states in the nation, but the oil is starting to run out. The coal, of course, high sulfur coal, not much of it being mined. And the third thing that I mentioned was this natural gas field, the Hugoton natural gas field, which is now 2/3 depleted. So beginning in 1997, the state went from being a net energy exporter, in other words, money coming into the state of Kansas because of energy being exported to the rest of the country, to being a net energy importer. And it's now
That would be
estimated,
bad.
well, it's estimated by the Kansas Energy Council, that was set up by former Governor Graves, that by 2008, Due to increasing consumption, Kansas energy imports are forecast to be 566 trillion BTU, valued at about $2.3 billion. That means that $2.3 billion is leaving the state of Kansas every year that can't be reinvested into jobs and other kinds of things in the state. So yet, here's a state that is ranked, depending upon whose ranking you want to believe, either first, second, or third in wind energy potential. This is the great dilemma that has caught the attention of policymakers in Kansas, liberal, conservative, Republican, and Democrat, as to what can we do to tap into this potential and to start exporting this energy to where the demand is. And this is where there's a proposal now that I'm working on that would set up basically a transmission authority, very similar to the Kansas Turnpike Authority, that would have the authority to go out and issue bonds in the bond market, and then also the power of what's called eminent domain, which is to get easements. Here's the way the Kansas Turnpike Authority worked. They went out and decided that when they needed a route basically between Wichita and Kansas City. They decided to do it as a toll road paid for by the cars. So they went out to the bond market and they got the money, they built the road, and then the bonds are paid off over 20 to 30 years by the income from the cars that are then also used to maintain the road. Well, why couldn't we do the same thing with electrical transmission lines in western Kansas? In other words, build these things, but we got to show the bond market that there's an income out there that can be tapped into. And here's the vision that I've got, which is that we can go out, build these transmission lines, which will then encourage wind farm developers to go out, put the wind farms up, and basically the authority would lease the lines to the wind farm developers, who then sell the electricity to utilities throughout the western part of the United States. So in effect, excuse me, people from other states would be paying to pay off the bonds. And my vision goes beyond
Sounds like a plan to me.
It is a plan. That Kansas could actually be in a position, I believe, to be like Alaska with its oil, which is that the oil revenues that are produced in Alaska are being used to fund the state government, the state schools, the roads, etc., so that in Alaska, people are actually written a check every year by the state government as kind of reverse income tax. The problem,
yeah, I'm like,
course,
so what's the holdup?
Well,
Let's
the
get
problem
on
with
it.
Alaska, of course, is that eventually the oil is going to run out, number one, and you got this little problem occasionally of Exxon Valdez's.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's a bad
Okay?
issue.
But look at wind power.
Clean.
It will never run out.
It never runs
Right.
out. Our hair
Wind-
always gets messed up.
Right. The wind's going to keep blowing. We're not going to have any Exxon Valdez's. And the
And so one
potential
falls
income-
over every so
right.
often, hits a cow.
Well, it probably, maybe. But there aren't a lot of people out there to be affected. The landowners out there also are wanting this. They are in a dire straits.
Well, they're hurting.
They're
Can you
hurting
think
bad.
of what a fabulous opportunity
Right.
to generate revenue for that area,
And
which
for
could be
the
used for
entire state.
education, the
Yes.
entire state, taxes, you know,
Right.
the roads, and maybe we could use that as a trade-off to help fix this education situation that we
Right.
keep staring in the face every year.
Exactly. Then we don't need to be able to build more coal plants. Now, let me explain. Once the electricity goes into the grid, you cannot distinguish a green electron from a black electron, okay? but the point is here that if demand for electricity is growing, despite efficiencies in electricity use, meaning more efficient appliances, and there's no question that has been happening. The manufacturers, electric manufacturers, are to be commended. I think they've been trying
Oh,
to make
yeah.
more efficient appliances. But the fact is, the demand is increasing. So why not meet that demand by wind power rather than building more coal-fired plants? And that is why the Sierra Club and others have said to KCP&L, before you jump in to building new coal-fired plants to meet anticipated demand 20, 30 years hence, take a look at this alternative. Make a commitment to looking at something other than the same old, which is causing problems of global warming, which is causing mercury pollution, etc. And there's another side to all this, which is job creation. You know, just this week, Ford announced that they're going to build a hybrid Escape, these dual gas electric engines that are more fuel efficient, that thus far have been built just by the Japanese. Some of you may, you know,
Yeah,
you've
I was
seen-
delighted we finally got the first American hybrid on
Right.
the market.
and that is going to produce more jobs. Here's the impact of wind power on Kansas, which is that we could actually manufacture the wind turbines in Wichita, Kansas, which is an aircraft manufacturing town now. Boeing is constantly threatening to move their operations overseas, and why not? Why not build these things in Wichita, Kansas, where you've got a trained labor force that's used to building things that look like turbines, and they're used to composite materials and that kind of thing. And there are people in Wichita who understand this, who are excited about this possibility. But we've got to but you got to create the demand for the turbines, which I think hinges on the transmission capacity. Let me throw another little thing in here.
And
which
do
is
that quickly because we have someone on the line who
All
wants to
right, all
talk
right.
to you.